in the spirit, fullest control.
I'm Mike Costello, and I'd like to talk to you in the next few minutes about healing the hasty. In our lives, we so often think of healing having to do with physical illnesses, and certainly we want to heal our physical ailments and illnesses. But we also know that we experience ailments and illnesses that attack our mind and our heart and our soul. And healing the hasty really directs the healing power and presence of God and the universe to that aspect of us which is not physical, but that is deeper and more unseen. The healing of the hasty has to do with healing the fastness, the hurriedness of our lives. And every one of us are plagued with this dis-ease from time to time. And even though it's not a disease of the body, sometimes this disease of hastiness or hurriedness creates in us a sickness that does manifest in the physical body, but it begins with this hasty kind of sickness or illness that exists in our minds and in our hearts. I'd like to invite you for a few moments to examine your life and to decide whether or not you have the hurry sickness right now, or if you've had it in the past. If you haven't had it in the recent past and you don't have it now, then maybe you can identify with some of these recognition points so that in the future, when you begin to come upon this experience in your life, that you'll be able to identify it and to deal with it more effectively in your daily life and life experience. If you spend a lot of time rushing, if you rush to eat, if you rush to work, if you rush to get things done, if it seems like you're always trying to catch up, then you probably have the beginnings of the hastiness of life or the hurry sickness. The rushing of life robs us of the ability to experience each moment, and it also robs us of the peace that we need to have. Another indication of this kind of malady, which really is a true illness within us, is if you have little time to spend at home. Perhaps you have a family, large or small, or perhaps you live alone. No matter what the home circumstance and situation is, all of us need to create for ourselves a safe haven in our home environment. And whether you live alone or with a large family, that home environment should be nurturing, it should be supportive, and it should be one that invites you to share and connect with other people. Obviously, if you have a large family, or you're a mother, a father, a sister, a brother, or you live in some kind of a household where there are others who reside with you, there's the continual ability to interact and connect with people. If you live alone, there's the opportunity to connect with other people who are in your life, but from the safe haven of your home. And so if you have little time to spend at home, and if the time that you do spend at home isn't peaceful but is filled with rushing and being hurried, then I would submit to you that you're probably beginning to express the realities of the hastiness of life. If you move and talk and drive quickly, and if you're always feeling that you have to move quickly to get said what you want to say or to get where you want to go, if you get frustrated easily when you drive the car, or if the bus that you're driving doesn't get you there fast enough, these are all indications that you are allowing your life to be filled with haste. You're inviting yourself to be hurried about everything that you do. And because of that, there's a continual aspect of stress in your life. If you never seem to get caught up, this is another recognition point. And so if you have any of these kinds of feelings, then you need to check yourself for this ailment, because even though it may not create a physical manifestation, it creates stress in your life, it robs you of peace, it robs you of your ability to interact with other people and connect with them, and it keeps you from living the fulfilled and happy life that you want and that we all want. Why is it that we rush? Why is it that we're so hurried? Why is it that in this time, it seems, that things are moving much more rapidly and more people around us are in a hurried and hasty way trying to accomplish and get done the things that they need to do? Psychologists and sociologists tell us that one of the reasons that we rush, one of the reasons that we are so hurried in our personal lives and so harried in what we do, is because at the heart of our being, within ourselves, we are unfulfilled And we are in the process of trying to find those things which will bring us fulfillment. All of us know the good and noble things in life that fulfill each and every one of us. Good relationships, successes in life, happiness, joy, health, prosperity, those kinds of things. We all know about them. We all know that we want them at one level or another. But so often in our lives, we haven't identified clearly what it is that we want in order to be fulfilled persons. Or we believe that we have to have a multitude of things to be fulfilled. In reality, the peace of your mind and the peace of your heart and the satisfaction of your inner being brings to you fulfillment. And all of the material and outward experiences of life that bring us joy and fulfillment are a result of what happens inside us. In New Thought, we say so often that we live in our minds and not in the world. That simply means that what goes on inside us, in our minds and in our thought processes, determine the quality of our life. If your life is spent hurried and rushed and harried, you are constantly in a situation and a feeling and an environment of turmoil and of stress. And that robs you of what it is you want and need in order to be a fulfilled and happy person. If we reflect upon those persons that we know in life and those persons that we've known of who have lived before us, who have had fulfilled and happy lives, for the most part, they have been people who have been able to be focused, identify the things in their lives that were most important. Perhaps they hurried, perhaps they rushed, perhaps they had stress like all of us have, but they didn't have it all of the time. They had it in measured portion when it was needed, directed where it needed to be. But for most of us, we are challenged with this reality of being hurried all the time. From the time we get up through the day until the time we go to bed. And so many people say they can't even sleep when they go to bed because their minds are still moving. Their life is still moving. This unfulfilled attitude continues to move through their being. Relaxation is an imperative for us, especially in this day and time. It is an imperative for our psychological well-being, and it is an imperative for our spiritual well-being. But to relax is so difficult, and to relax in the midst of this hurried reality and expression of life is a double challenge. And so I'd like to share with you some ideas that we use readily and widely in New Thought that invite you to become relaxed, focused, and centered. When I talk about these things, I'm not inviting you at all to change your religion or your faith, but I am inviting you to change your way of thinking, to change your way of thinking about life, about your life, and the lives of those around you, to give some thought, some conscious awareness to the importance and the necessity and the great and wonderful value of getting over this hurriedness of life, getting over this sickness of mind and spirit that robs you of the peace that you want and that you deserve so fully and completely. So in order to embrace the ideas of relaxation, one of the things that we can do is visualize. That has to do with simply seeing ourselves the way that we know we are, seeing ourselves the way we want ourselves to be. If you're challenged to rush and hurry, then visualize and see yourself. That is to have a vision within your mind of yourself moving more slowly, moving more methodically, and having the processes and priorities of life set up in motion and in sequence so that you don't feel that you need to do everything all at once. In order to do this, in order to embark upon the process of creating a visualization technique within your body, what you need to do is go apart from the stress and strain of life. It can be done in the simplest of places. It can be in your bathroom in the morning as you're cleaning, shaving, showering, getting ready for the day. It can be at the kitchen sink in the afternoon. It can be at the wheel of your car. It can be seated at your desk. It can also be in a quiet place in your home if you have the luxury of that. But go to a place of quiet refuge just for a moment. And even in the midst of life, you can claim that. Begin the process of visualizing yourself peaceful and balanced. And begin to do this by embarking upon the process of simply taking a few deep breaths. All of us know the story that we've been told when we are challenged or angry about counting to 10, or take a deep breath. If we begin to take deep breaths, deep and cleansing breaths, we begin to bring into our being peace and centering, and then we're able to set aside this hurried nature. The next phase has to do with meditation that we talk about a lot in New Thought. And meditation isn't prayer. Meditation is the process of simply being in the quiet and silent moment and opening yourself to the presence and the power of God. No matter what your faith is, no matter what your religion is, this has simply to do with opening yourself to that which you believe and know to be divine. So if we create the reality of visualizing peace, if we're conscious of our breathing several times a day, especially in the midst of stress, and if we begin the process of visualization, deep breathing, and mild and beginning with small steps of meditation and quiet, we can begin to clear ourselves, we can begin to center ourselves, and we can begin to heal the dis-ease. And I didn't say disease, I said dis-ease of this hurry and stress that we have in our lives. In order to cultivate calmness in your life, there are some simple things that all of us could do. One is we could get up a little bit earlier. Doesn't mean to get up a little bit earlier to do more. It means get up a little bit earlier so that the day begins freshly and you have some time to center, to visualize, to breathe. It can be 5 or 10 minutes, it can be 20 or 30 minutes, but have that little bit of peacefulness in the beginning of the day. Simplify your life. Look at what it is that you're doing and examine whether or not you really need to be doing all the things that you need to do or that you believe that you need to do. And in that same process, begin to prioritize the things that you do. All of us do many more things in a day than we need to do, many more things in a week or a month or a year. And there are many things that we need to let go of. And to let go of those things, those few things that aren't important, and to emphasize the things that are important, can change this rushing hurriedness into a methodical, peaceful process of order in your life. The next thing is to have time for yourself. So few of us have real time for ourselves. What is it that you enjoy doing? Spend some time doing that. Some people enjoy nature. Other people may want to go to church or to a class. Some people like to read a book. Some people may want to watch a favorite television program. Whatever it is, some people may want to go and have a meal or do something that you really enjoy doing that is really just for you. And every one of us needs to nurture ourselves with this process of taking care of ourselves and creating time for ourselves. A little bit of time, not a great deal, but a little bit of time. Prioritizing ourselves, beginning a little earlier in the day. These are simple techniques that can bring about a more calm and serene person, a better and more peaceful life. We believe that peace is your divine right. We believe that you may be robbing yourself of the peace and the tranquility and serenity of life that is yours and that you deserve because of the difficulties and the rush and the hurriedness of life. Give up the hurriedness, accept the healing presence and power of truth, and allow that truth to heal you in spirit and mind and protect you from diseases of the body. We believe in healing, and we believe in prayer, and we would like to invite you at this point in our program to pause with us for a moment of reflection. Eternal and loving God, we gather our hearts and minds together in the reality of your divine presence, and we know that in your presence there is peace and perfect peace. Help us to identify those things which cause us to rush and to hurry. Help us to let go of those things, to be centered in your presence, and to claim the peace and the happiness as a whole and healed and perfect child of God. We ask these things in the name of faith, in the name of hope, in the name of love. Amen.
Those were wonderful suggestions you made, Dr. Costello, and if we would all follow those, we would live longer and more happily.
I think so. And, so often in our church and in other New Thought churches, we spend a lot of time trying to improve the quality of persons' lives.
Yes.
And I think that is really the core of spirituality, isn't it? And
Yes,
the
it is.
core of religion. And instead of emphasizing some abstract ideas, what we really want to do is to bring practical ideas to people so that they can transform and change their lives.
Yes, and we never emphasize the negative, we emphasize the positive. And those were marvelous suggestions you made, from the deep breathing right on down the line.
Mhm. We talk about deep breathing because it's a part of our faith tradition, and
Yeah.
we do visualization, deep breathing, and meditation as a normal part of routine. But for people who have never experienced those aspects of spirituality, they're very practical from a physical standpoint. And of course, yoga has employed some of them, and a lot of people feel that that's not religious or spiritual, and they feel less threatened by it. But I think anyone can embark upon just a process of deep breathing, especially in times of stress. And one of the points of this talk was that we all hurry too much.
Yes.
I do the same thing. I hurried to get here to the studio today. We all hurry too much. And what we really need to do is to plan our lives and prioritize our lives, and then do the things that are necessary, important, and are helpful to us.
Yeah. Well, sometimes we have to hurry in order to make appointments, but the way we hurry would make the difference. It's like I heard someone say years ago, I might make my footsteps go faster, but my body doesn't go faster, meaning that she doesn't get tense inside. So when we're tense inside, our mind blocks, we don't think as well, our heart rate goes up, we're not, our blood isn't flowing as well, and we don't, then we're put under heavy stress. So too much heavy stress is what causes illness.
Absolutely, and I think we can't minimize the fact that the very principles that we're talking about can keep us from physical illnesses.
Yes.
And we know about ulcers, and we know about heart disease, and we know about high blood pressure and kidney disease. But now there's real strong evidence that we're talking about serious illnesses like cancer
Yeah.
and other horrible ailments, which really have their core, although there's certainly physiological causes for them, but they really, many of them have their core at the stress level that we have.
Exactly. And when we're stressed out, we're more unpleasant to other people, and then they're unpleasant to us, and it creates more stress. So it's a round robin of just creating greater stress, ever greater stress. So if we can stay calm by the deep breathing and peaceful, by not thinking negative thoughts, but thinking the positive aspect of the thoughts, then we eliminate that.
That's very true. And the aspect that I spoke about that relates to home is tremendously
Yes.
important. I think so many of us have bad situations in our home life, and that has
Okay.
to be dealt with. I mean, if we're going to have healing and wholeness, not only for ourselves, but for others. But our home environment really needs to be a nurturing environment,
Yeah.
and we need to have time to be at home. I'm kind of amazed when I talk to people and we do counseling, how many people, especially young people, older people tend to get back into the nesting syndrome, which is
Yes.
wonderful. But so many people who are in the midst of life, and that I would say from the college years to the retirement years, spend so little time at home. And at home is just kind of a place where we come to have a real quick dinner and pass through and maybe watch a little television and have a shower and change our clothes.
Yeah.
And that home environment needs to be nurturing. And so many people don't have an affluent environment. It doesn't have to do with affluence, and doesn't even have to do with space. We were talking
Yes.
before the program about the value of even living in a small space and how we could all do that. But it's making the environment suitable so that it's a place that we come to away from the world and away from the stresses of life. Now, those who have a stressful home and a hurried home need to identify that. And of course, it's difficult with children. It's difficult if someone has 4 or 5 children. And I'm sure someone's listening and saying it's difficult with one child.
Yes.
But children do complicate, but they can also bless in terms of making the home a nurturing place. And I think the children can come to see that home as nurturing as well.
Yeah. Well, and two, if we just live with one other person, we're very often there's great stress, but it's how we look at the situation that matters. If we can look at the other person and say, well, that's their problem, and just keep our own body attuned through our attunement techniques of just attuning to creative God and the deep breathing and the meditation, then we don't let them bother us. And I heard a woman say one time years ago, no, my husband hasn't changed, but I have. I've changed in the way I react to him. And then they gain a much better home life.
Absolutely. And that whole aspect of change is just fundamental to what we talk about all the
Yes,
time, isn't
yes.
it? We spend a lot of time on change. And we need to change the hurriedness, and we need to change that a lot in our lives.
Yes, and we're living in this time of great change externally, so we need to keep our own internal quiet and calm. just through the very techniques that you outlined.
And just as we said early in this talk, there's no problem with stress or with the hurriedness of life. We're all hurried in our lives, but the problem is when we're hurried all the time.
Yes.
And when there's no time, when we have peace, and there's no time. I know in church there are people I can think of right offhand, and of course we won't name any of them, but that hurry to get to church,
Yes.
and then hurry through the church service, and then hurry through the coffee time, and then they hurry to get, so their life is constantly hurried. In my own experience, a number of years ago, I identified that reality in my life. I was so busy and
Being busy.
so exactly, so busy being busy that the days and the weeks and the months were passing, and I was accomplishing wonderful things for myself and for other people. It wasn't that at all. But what I identified was that, my goodness, I'm not living. I'm just passing through so rapidly and so quickly. And I would go to the office in the morning and every hour was taken and there was something to do. And it was necessary to change that. And it is necessary. And in our church, and as you know, but maybe our viewers don't know, we're all volunteers. We all have life outside of the church, and most of us work, and all of us have a social life and a being outside the church. And so many times there are demands that are placed upon us, or people that ask us to do this or that, and it's simply not possible to do everything.
That's
And
right.
I think we need to come to a point in time of understanding that and not feeling guilty for that, and simply saying to people, I'm sorry, but I can't do that.
That's right. Again, it's how we view ourselves. If we view ourselves as being a failure and not having all the time everyone wants of us, and we could never have all that much time because there isn't that much time available. And if it's how we view ourselves that matters, and just to accept ourselves the way we are and our limitations of time or talent or whatever, and not hassle ourselves.
It has to do with self-esteem
Yes.
and self-value. And I think that the point that you brought up, which I didn't, which is a big part of this, is that this whole aspect of unfulfillment comes from our view of ourselves and our view of our own inadequacies, our own guilt, our own feelings of inferiority to some extent. So that self-worth and self-esteem manifests, or lack of, manifests itself so often in our overcompensating by believing that we need to do more than we can do.
Yeah.
So kind
Yeah.
of the super mom.
Yes. And also that other people need to do what we think they should do, or make their own make a decision and do it right away. We have to allow everyone to go at their own pace and not be involved, stay detached. And if we do, then we don't have the problem of stress in our own lives of thinking, well, why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? We help them all we can, and then we put it aside, detach ourselves.
That's eminently important when we deal with children. It's eminently important when we deal with other relationships, but especially with children, we need to let them go.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, our children, we always seem to know best because we've experienced life, but really children and those in relationships with us need to be allowed to experience life as they need to experience it, not as we want them to experience it. And so very often we believe that they should behave in a certain way or do something, or that we should do something for them, or that they should comply. And when they don't behave the way that we want them to, then we become stressed and unhappy and are more hurried about trying to make them do what we want them to do, when in fact they have to do what they have to do. And some of that may be suffering.
That's right. And they'll never learn if they don't learn from experience. They need to learn. I know a family where the mother was a perfect, what everyone called a perfect mother, but she made every decision for her 3 children. And she died rather young and left those children all under age of 14. And they had never learned to think for themselves. And you know, it was really hard for them to trust anyone else who allowed them to think for themselves. So we have to allow people to be themselves, as you said, children, but from all levels. And when we do counseling, to detach and just do the best we can and then forget it. Whatever they do is their choice.
Very important that we allow people to experience that which they need to experience, and that we take care of ourselves, and then we share ourselves with others.
Yeah.
But each of us has to take responsibility for our own lives.
Exactly.
And it is not possible for us to make someone take responsibility, even though we would like to. And of course, in that process, we want people to view their lives and themselves in a positive and affirming way.
That's the most important thing, because if they do, they don't feel like a failure. If they do, they don't get stressed out. If they do, their blood pressure doesn't go up and they live longer, more happily at least.
Absolutely. Self-esteem and confidence.
Mhm.
And confidence comes from this issue of self-worth,
Yeah.
self-worth
Yes.
and the value of self. And I think that's really a lesson that we all need to learn. And every one of us need to work at that constantly. And one of the wonderful things about New Thought and metaphysical philosophy is that it empowers people. The whole process of our faith tradition is to empower people in a practical way so that they can live better and deal more effectively with the realities and experiences of life.
Yes. And if I could say one thing to our audience, be kind to yourself. Treat yourself with the same gentleness that you treat others. Be non-judgmental with yourself. And when you do something that you wish you hadn't done, then make it right if you can, and then forget it.
Mm-hmm. And so if you live a hurried life,
Yes.
and if you're constantly plagued with this hasty dis-ease, then you can identify that and you can change.
Yes, and deliberately slow down.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, you saw it in your own life. I've seen it in mine. We've all seen it in our lives. But we have to, and we can take the mantra of serenity, if you would, and just always try to be serene in whatever we try to do, that we accomplish it, if we really try.
Mm-hmm.
So we can consciously try to be less hasty, more serene.
And that issue of doing so consciously,
Yes.
doing so beginning in our mind and then demonstrating it outwardly in our lives.
Yeah. Some famous person said most people are as happy as they make up their minds to be. Most people are anything that they make up their minds to be, whether it's happy, unhappy, rushed, or comfortable, whatever we make up our minds to be. So we can plan our course and then follow through on it and be ever so much more comfortable.
Very, very good advice and extremely important for each one of us. And Dr. Freelander and I have been sharing with you some ideas and concepts about confident living. We hope that you found them useful, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Helps me be strong, confident living, comforts my heart. From such a blessing I can't depart. Confident living helps me expand visions of value, the kingdom at hand. Confident living, talent to win, gift of the Spirit, moves from within. Confident living.